If you're listening on podcast, be sure to tune in to our YouTube channel for more content. The link is in the description.
Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast.
In the 1980s, the Atlantic Richfield Oil Company, or ARCO, hired Bernard J Eastlund to help figure out a way to use 33 trillion cubic feet of natural gas for a proposed government project. Eastland came up with several patents for a device that could theoretically generate enough power that it could be used to take out incoming Soviet missiles and destroy enemy communications. Eastland was eventually let go from his consulting position because his ideas were seen as too far out there. In 1992, APTI, a division of ARCO, won the Pentagon contract to build HAARP. They denied that the Eastland patents had anything to do with the facility. While HAARP was being constructed, rumors began to circulate about its true purpose, an ultimate weapon capable of things out of science fiction. Some claimed it could be used to do everything from mind control, death rays, creating earthquakes, to its most famous claim, alter the weather. But was there any truth to any of these claims? You might be surprised. After more than 3 decades, we look back on HAARP and the conspiracy theories that still surround it in this episode of Wild and Weird Radio.
Welcome back to Wild and Weird Radio, everybody. We are so stoked to have you with us. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, go over and mash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. Go do it now. We can see it using our mind stuffs. So go do it, or else.
It's like a headache or something.
Anyway, we've got your great hosts, Jesse Doyle, Ron Lanham, and of course, me, Joe Purdue, hanging out here with you this evening. Wherever you guys are listening, we greatly appreciate it, especially you folks out in Iowa. For whatever reasons, I mean, we love you guys, but you make up like 9% of our base.
Love it. That's awesome.
How about it?
Go Iowa. Yes. If you're from Iowa, chime in. Yes. Let us know.
And so that's great. We appreciate all you listeners out there. And then, if you guys want to go and drop an email or any kind of review, we will read it on air. I mean, just let us know if you want us to read it or something, or, send us a report. We'd love to talk to you, or even have you just call into the show. We've been trying to get people to call into the show to talk forever, and nobody actually does it. So, well,
give them time, Joe. You'll probably regret ever wanting that. So
I know, right? Currently, we've got like a whole 3 listeners, but
this is not Art Bell, and these are open live.
Yeah. Good one, well, guys, it's been a really slow news week, so we're going to give it our best shot.
Terrible news week. We don't have to make up some news. So let's roll the
news.
news.
Let's go to the news desk.
Let's go to the news desk. It's funny, we don't change when we go to the news desk. It's like with the old news shows, they would like change the camera angle. Oh, we got this little fancy graphic comes over, and it's like we're still sitting here.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's have some news, Joe. I mean,
I think the biggest thing that happened was the James Webb release.
Oh, it was cool, wasn't it?
It really was. I mean, I was blown away by just the viewfinder photos, but when we finally got the chance to see Space's butthole, I was just blown away.
That's how you
call back to last week.
That's just how you degrade one of the greatest achievements of humanity that's been recorded in the past at least 10,000 years. Right. Yeah, it was impressive though. It really was impressive. And me and Dave were watching it live, and we were just like having this conversation back and forth, like, oh my God, did you see that? And then they showed the warped area, and I'm like, wait a minute. And on this one image, it's like, that's a black hole. And he's like, no, that's just something else. And I'm like, I don't know. And then, of course, it was a black hole, which was just crazy to see this whole
AKA
galaxy.
Space's butthole.
Sure, why not? Just whole galaxy just being pulled into this, into this void. It was amazing.
It really is neat to see
Really
that.
cool.
Like, it's terrifying also.
What was really great, though, I thought, was that we got to see a demonstration of that Star Trek technology, where in Star Trek, they're like, oh, it shows a planet. It's a class M. It's habitable, blah, 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 blah. It's like 10,000 light years away, and they can tell you all this. We can do that now.
We can do that. That's a thing now.
Pretty cool. Wow, I'm pretty sure we always could. But
thank you, Captain Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else did we have?
Jesse is just like, I don't even know what they're talking about.
Some more nerd crap we're going into.
Sure.
If we broke out the
Don't
Star
hold
Trek
back.
talk again.
Don't hold back.
lost
I mean, you just tell us how you feel when we go into nerd talk. It's okay. We're used to that. We don't care.
Yeah.
We're used to women scoffing at us. Ha ha!
Pretty much.
Every day. In some way, shape, or form, as our governor says.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's his trademark. I've got my own trademark, but it's not suitable for air.
No, we're not doing that on here. No, we're not. Totally not doing that on here.
So did we have anything else really notable?
I've got kind of a cool one.
Okay.
Give me something cool.
There was an auction that they did in the UK. Lord Haley had a few things from Lord Haley's estate was auctioned off. And they amongst the effects that they found and auctioned off were a century-old vampire fighting.
Yes.
Yes.
This is
that's awesome.
Ago, but the kit's pretty awesome. I'm gonna say, and if I had that money, I would be getting that for my collection because it was pretty awesome. Included in the box, it was a locking box. And included in it, let's take a look here at a full list because it's pretty neat. Inside the box were crucifixes, a matching pair of pistols, a brass powder flask, holy water, a Gothic Bible, a wooden mallet, a stake, brass candlesticks, and rosary beads. And everything in the kit was stamped with his initials. Also included was Metropolitan Police paperwork, apparently registering an alien enemy in 1915. During World War I. So I don't even know what that is. So an alien enemy.
Interesting.
On the paperwork, whatever that could be. But yeah, so I thought that was cool. So like a legit vampire hunting kit owned by a lord was auctioned off.
Is that not awesome?
Yeah, it's pretty dope. It's pretty
we
dope.
need to build these.
Did you notice that they were surprised that it sold for as much as it did, by the way?
Yeah, they're like, oh, this is 5 times the guide price. I'm like, yeah, that's
no. We would have totally bought that. Yes. I mean, if this is why we don't have money. I was telling Maria this, actually, she's the one who brought that to my attention. And she's like, if we'd had money, I would have got that. I'm like, yeah, that's why we don't have money. Because, we would blow it on stupid things like vampire hunting kits and, giant Tesla rays and stuff.
Yeah, I remember that. Oh,
my friend and I went out. We went to Asheville last week, and we went like shopping for oddities type stuff for our collections. And I was this close to buying a child's coffin. So yeah, I understand the struggles. I sent pictures to Joe, and I was like, "Really want this child's coffin?" He's like, "Well, get it if you want, sweetie." I was like, "Yeah, I know. That's what you need for the home is a child's coffin in the corner."
It could have been one of the leftovers from Roswell, though.
It could have been, Jess.
You could have labeled it as that and charged people $25 to come see it.
Yeah. I don't want these people at my house. What are you talking about? I have a hard enough time with the stalkers I do have. So
good point. She's got a fair point. I agree.
So speaking of, there's one other weird piece of news. There's a gentleman out, I think it was Arkansas or Oklahoma, and this was reported on by NBC. He killed his buddy. This is a actual murder case because he was afraid that they were going to be attacked by Bigfoot.
It makes perfect sense to me.
I mean, every time I'm out in the woods with Ron, I think about killing him and using that excuse.
I mean, it works great. It's a great excuse. I really don't understand it at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. Like, it doesn't make sense. What? I mean, I guess logic goes out the window at that point, but
I guess.
Hey, you can't fail if you don't try.
That's true. I mean, I would, me personally, I would think the numbers game would play in favor against a Bigfoot rather than saying, I'm going to kill my buddy and then say that we were afraid that Bigfoot was going to get us. Yeah, unless, of course, you were sacrificing your friend to
summon Bigfoot.
The wise Bigfoot shaman lord.
That's what it was. Yes. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
They were trying to summon a Bigfoot space creature version.
Little did he know he got arrested because, in fact, he summoned Zorpazorp and did not go well for him.
No, it did not. So, yeah, that's some weird news. I mean, I think
it's really odd and really sad at the same time.
I'm sad. That makes me depressed. So let's end the news because
let's go.
News
Well,
depressing.
We got some good news first. We got some good news first coming up.
Okay.
So this is not necessarily, news, but it's news. So we've got Wild and Weird Con coming up, kids. It is getting ready to be Wild and Weird season. Wild and Weird Con is coming up on October the 15th with a VIP event on the 14th. You do not want to miss that VIP event. It is a very limited outing, and this VIP event will be hosted by none other than Mr. Joseph Doyle and Jesse Doyle of Hellbent Holler. They're going to be taking you guys out on a little excursion and showing you guys how to use some equipment. It's going to be a really good time. You're not going to want to miss it. Then we're going to feed you at the end, and you get to kind of hang out with everybody and speakers and whatnot.
We're going to feed them to Bigfoot?
Shh.
Oh, sorry. Ruined the surprise completely.
Plot twist, we're going to feed them a Bigfoot. So.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Then next up on the list, it's finally been announced. This has been in the air for 2 years, guys, but it is finally announced, and we can go public telling you that we are speaking at the Mothman Festival 2022. We are going to be speaking on Saturday, I believe at 4 p.m., 3 or 4 p.m.
I don't know.
One of those two slots.
You're going to want to be there, though, because we're going to pick one random person out of the audience and give them something really cool.
That's right.
No, for real, we are.
To be sacrificed to Bigfoot.
No, absolutely not. Not that.
No, yeah, it's going to be really, really cool. You guys are going to enjoy it. We're going to be going over, it'll be a little bit different than some of our other talks you've heard us do if you've caught us at other events. So you're going to enjoy that one. We're really, really looking forward to it. And then I believe as of this show tomorrow, you might actually be able to catch Ron somewhere.
Maybe. I mean, don't catch me. That's not cool. But, you might be able to find me somewhere at some event. Possibly.
That has to do with the big space acorn up in Pennsylvania.
Space acorns. Yeah. Space acorns that fell out of the sky. That's right. Yeah.
So the Kecksburg UFO Festival is going on this weekend. It's going to be today, tomorrow, and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
That is the here coming up for you guys. You're going to enjoy, if you're in the Pennsylvania area or within driving reach to Kecksburg, PA, go ahead and make the jaunt. It's going to be really fun little show. It's really big.
Yeah. It's going to be big this year.
Really small space, so it's like super exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be really big this year, and we're going to have a very, very, very exclusive, awesome item for the event. We are not selling at this event, by the way. We're not vending, but we will have our presence felt at this event because we will have someone vending our stuff, a little bit of our stuff there for you, and that'll be Mr. David Spinks. He will be up there and selling some books and whatnot, and he'll have some of our items there. We'll reveal that before this week's over too, so you'll get to see that. Anyway, I think that's the news. Is that the news? Are we good?
That is the news.
That is the news. I'm gonna hit the little news button that doesn't exist, but I'll hit it anyway. There we go. Hit it.
Well, guys, this week's episode we have a very, very interesting, very controversial topic. Super fun. This is going to be a little bit of a deep dive into conspiracy world and not so conspiracy world at the same time.
No, it's going to be borderline. It's that last sandwich we talk about. This is the epitome of the last sandwich, actually.
Yeah,
Best example you'll find.
It's one of the best examples of it. And of course, folks, we are talking about the HAARP project. That is the Ron. You want to fill them in on what the HAARP project is, because you are probably the most versed human being on this thing.
Is or was, you mean?
Yeah.
HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. It started from a little thing they did up there in Gakona, Alaska, actually. And I know a little bit about it because back around when it was being built, it started to kind of show up in publications and whatnot. And there was all this conspiracy starting to be built up around it. And actually, the conspiracy started in popular, I think it was Popular Mechanics or Popular Science. I can't remember which magazine it was.
It was Popular Mechanics.
It was one of them. Was it Popular Mechanics? Yeah, it was one of them. I actually had the article of that edition. But anyway, the official thing is this was a project that was built upon pre-existing ideas to manipulate the ionosphere, and those reasons are varied, and surprise, they were, they traced their roots back to like 1950s. I believe it was who was it, Adrija Puarch. I'm butchered that name. I don't know, but this research found that clairvoyant brain waves tuned to 8 hertz frequencies when they were using their so-called psychic power. So through biofeedback, he basically came up with the theory that our brains are vulnerable, and they're vulnerable to ELF waves. Now this comes in handy because you'll see why. He also examined further things and found out that 7.83 hertz, which is Earth's frequency, that is the Schumann resonance. We feel good. We feel good at that. But when we disrupt those frequency waves, we get nervous behavior, riotous behavior, depression, et cetera, et cetera. So why that's important is because somewhere around 1980? Yeah, it was 1980, mid-1980s. The Atlantic Richfield Oil Company, ARCO for short, they had this little problem. They had 33 trillion cubic feet of Alaskan natural gas that they wanted to sell off to a government project. And they hired this guy. His name was Bernard Eastlund. Bernard Eastlund came up with these ideas to burn off this gas. One of the ideas that he came up with, there were several, but one of the ideas that Eastlund came up with was to make this gigantic facility that would beam incredible power into the upper ionosphere and disturb the ionosphere in such a ways that it could do a lot of things. It could bounce radio signals around. It could disturb the atmosphere and change the jet stream. It could do all kinds of stuff, And it was those kind of thinkings that kind of got they got the conspiracy trains rolling. But what's really funny is this did happen. It did get built. It was HAARP. And HAARP was built actually in like 90, I can't remember what year it was. Hang on a second. I'll tell you. Yeah, it was in 1992. APTI, that's ARCO, won the Pentagon contract to build HAARP. And from 92 on, the really funny thing is that they denied any applications that came from Eastland. They basically said, "No, we just built this thing." Oh, okay. You just came up with something that this guy designed pretty much note for note, right? But you built it. So anyway, they built this massive array of antennas. It's 180 antennas. They all act as one big thing. And what they do is they set up a waveform. And that waveform travels upwards and can be focused in the upper ionosphere. Now, what it does is when it hits the upper ionosphere layer, it heats this area. It heats this little one area, okay? So you've got 1.7 gigawatts basically burning into this area, heating up the upper ionosphere, this layer. And that creates, or can create, I should say, not creates, can create a lens of sort. And we can bounce other signals off that lens and bounce them around the globe and communicate with satellites and all these other military assets.
And if you hit it at just the right speed. You can also travel back in time.
Probably. But that's some of the applications for this thing, and it ran for quite a while. And it also started causing a lot of controversy. There were serious scientists who came forward and said, "Look, what you're doing can really disrupt the Earth's weather systems."
Right, and there's speculation that goes back even further than the development and the construction of the HAARP project that takes us back to Tunguska. It's one of my personal favorites. I particularly subscribe and have, since I've researched the Tunguska event, that Nikola Tesla was somehow responsible by bouncing something off the ionosphere, using the ionosphere to manipulate a beam and flatten an entire forest, just to say he did it, or to prove a point. Because this was all around the time of the death ray talk. And with HAARP, we now have this big satellite array that was being used in a way to make disturbances on the ionosphere. It was causing weather manipulation, could cause weather manipulation. And there's a lot of people who ascribe to the theory that it is in fact used for weather manipulation, and that it has been moved and is still in use, and they're using it to do things today. And that's why we have some of the crazy and extreme weather we have now. I don't know. I can kind of see it. It's one of those instances where, like you said, it's the perfect lie sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
We have the science that works.
Oh, it absolutely works. Yeah.
We have the conspiracy and extreme possibilities that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the reality of what was happening. And who's to say that there weren't experiments being done?
Well, there were. There had to be. This thing was run by DARPA and the U.S. Air Force and the Navy.
Think about the ramifications of controlling the weather, of having that kind of power. You would be able to possibly control a famine that could wipe out entire swaths of humanity, starve them to death. You could say steer a tornado into the direction of an enemy, and then you could always have that plausible deniability of what you think we're controlling the weather.
How absurd is that?
How absurd is that? So the ramifications of controlling the weather are insane. You can have something flood out that you need taken care of and destroyed. And, I wouldn't ever put it past the government to look into some sort of weaponry that could possibly be just shuffled off, and there'd be an excuse like, oh, there's no way. I mean, if you shoot somebody with a nuclear weapon, that's obviously coming from somewhere. But if you can manipulate the weather, then there's so much deniability there that you can just say, no, absolutely not. That's crazy talk right there.
You're absolutely right.
Were you guys, did either of you see the stuff that took place over Dubai this past summer? Like not this current summer, but it was late last fall.
Probably. What was it? I don't remember.
So Dubai has been using lasers to do the exact same thing that the HAARP program was doing, essentially, and they're blasting to kind of tap rain out of the clouds and artificially cause rain to come down, because Dubai, despite being one of the most elaborately built cities in the world and one of the wealthiest places on earth, it has to import roughly 80% of its goods. Like, you can't grow anything there. It's so arid. They get this minuscule amount of rain. It's somewhere in the ballpark of like 2 to 4 inches a year. Well, when you have a area that is built essentially to handle 2 to 4 inches of rain a year, that means that you have an ecosystem that is essentially evolved or adapted to function in that said ecosystem that only gets the 2 to 4 inches of rain. When you overwhelm that ecosystem, you're not going to have anything like a forest that can absorb inches and inches and inches of rain at one time. So it creates this catastrophic flooding that can take place. And that's just what they had there in Dubai. They shocked the clouds, so to speak, and it opened a torrential downpour unlike anything that area had ever seen previously.
Yeah, I remember this.
And it caused devastating flooding because there's no irrigation systems. There's no need for an irrigation system if you only get 4 inches of rainwater a year. There's no biology. There's no fauna that is capable of absorbing that kind of moisture that is on the ground. So it turns everything into this massive river plain. And that's just what happened to Dubai. Now, imagine using that system, like Jesse said. If you wanted to hit some area of particular interest with a type of weather that they're not used to, that they're not accustomed to, and that the environment and the terrain is just not adapted to, you could absolutely cause complete and utter destruction, destroy crops, destroy villages, essentially with the press of a button, if you could actually get this to work in a large scale way.
Yeah, if it worked in that way. You know, of course, it's very important to understand that that application was completely denied. It can't do that, according to, you know, certain people.
I mean, they said that about UFOs too for 50 years.
Sure. But
so
we
we're
are
just
talking
throw
about
that out there.
Well, we are talking about a government that also exploded, nuclear weapons in space just to see if they could affect the radiation field in hopes that maybe they could stop nuclear missiles. You know, kind of like the old game. What was that? Missile Command. Remember Missile Command, when the missiles are coming in, you send up the missile and they actually did that to see if it would work. But and it did work, but it was limitedly. That's Operation Argus. If anyone's interested, go look that up. And what's interesting about it is that was in 1958. And it was inconclusive because they couldn't get the particles to do what they needed them to do for any extended time. But if you had a system that you could switch on and have that kind of a effect on the ionosphere, you have to remember when HAARP was built, we were in this little thing, working on this little thing called the SDI, the Star Wars, the Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars is for short. Remember that? And it lost a lot of funding, but some of that funding went allegedly to fund this program. So they were doing something more than just a little bit of rural research up there, you know. And it's very interesting because the Russians were doing the same thing. Soviet Union was doing the exact same thing. They had a project over there that they were doing the same thing with, and they used the same cover story. We're just studying the upper ionosphere. It's not really a lie. They were studying the upper ionosphere. They were trying to figure out ways to manipulate and
but they were
it.
studying the way that it was responding when it was artificially excited.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to make essentially what I used to call it back in the day when I was doing research on HAARP was, and believe me, I did a lot of research on HAARP before it ever hit the big conspiracy trains and all that like it is today. There's so much nonsense around it today. It's laughable. You just want to stay away from the subject. But there are things that it could do, theoretically. It doesn't mean it did. But in my view, I looked at it as this Swiss Army knife of future weapon. And it had the ability to do these things, at least in theory. And some of the more exotic things that it could do was beaming this high electromagnetic force and causing anything from, earthquakes to storm manipulation, like you guys talked about, right down to, brainwave activity and affecting mental health. And there were people who experienced mental health issues in and around Alaska at the time that this thing was running.
And so that's where the mind control facet of the conspiracy theories come from.
Yes.
That it's controlling people's minds, but it's really just the frequencies, much like the theory behind, say, like infrasound. A lot of people talk about with Bigfoot encounters that they use infrasound to shock or confuse people that are near them, that using infrasounds and low frequencies or high frequencies to just manipulate somebody's mind. That's where the mind control factor comes in.
Yep, absolutely. And you do have this thing, if that's in theory, that you have this one facility that can do all this stuff, and it could also do something potentially incredibly powerful that we could probably utilize again today with the new space race, with Space Force and so forth. They were looking at a way to create a basic EMP that didn't rely on nuclear weapons being exploded in the upper atmosphere, because that's the only way we could produce an EMP at the time. So imagine that you had this steerable beam that you could do exactly that. You can just shut the power off in your country. That's a heck of a weapon. It's hard for me to believe that they just shut that down.
I mean, just like when we were talking to Stanton Friedman.
Yeah.
He would talk about all these dark projects that he was a part of, and as soon as they worked, the funding would disappear, and the project would get canceled, and he'd be off the project.
Well, that's because they would go to the black budgets at that point.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And in, I think it was 1993, HAARP was one of the most underreported news stories of the time. There were actually stories, guys, that Men in Black showed up and were harassing people in the town. And basically anybody who got in the way of this program, they wanted this program. They wanted this program bad, from what it was told. I don't know that for a fact. That's just hearsay, of course. But, there's some weird stuff around that whole facility. And they were very, very transparent after the conspiracy theory started, by the way. They actually opened up the facility and had people come in. They were given tours, And one of the biggest things about it was in 1995, the Washington Post ran a story about it. And they actually talked to some of the people involved with the program. And here's what they had to say about it. The program is called HAARP, Active Auroral Research Project. When finished, it will consist of 360 72-foot antennas. It did not make it that far as I can remember. In the town of Gakona, Alaska. It will transmit a beam of high frequency energy in the atmosphere 35 miles to 500 miles above the Earth to heat the ionosphere as a way to improve military communications. Okay, that's not a lie. It was going to improve military communications because they were going to bounce these ELF wave, extremely low frequency waves. And here's the thing about an ELF wave, guys. ELF wave is an extremely low frequency. Think of a bass on a bass guitar. When you hit that bump, and everything vibrates, right? Those waves they're going to go farther than any other wave. You're going to hear that. That's why you can hear the bass down the street and you can't hear the treble and when someone's playing a stereo.
Yep. Well,
ELF waves, they can't be stopped, basically. So they can go right through the earth. So this is also where they got the theory for earthquake regeneration and so forth, you see. So again, there's truth here, but there's also a little speculation. But they need those ELF waves to communicate with our submarines. So again, it's called war error. Let's keep our mind on that. They're making these things to where they're trying to create a way to communicate with the fleet and with the rest of the military communication, the whole comm unit, in the event something goes down. But the strongest skepticism, note of skepticism, is found by a small group of American physicists. Now listen to this. Some of whom have aired complaints in a scientific journal such as Physics and Society. These physicists fear HAARP may not be simply the benign science experiment advocates describe, but possibly phase one of a secret U.S. military program that could be seeking ways to blow other countries' spacecraft out of the sky or disrupt communications over large portions of the planet. William and other physicists fear the government's plan a secret second stage of HAARP, in which it would beam much more energy into the ionosphere that could produce a severe disruption of the upper atmosphere at one location that may, quote, produce effects that spread rapidly around the Earth for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Pentagon said it had no interest in doing any more ambitious tests, and basically they canceled the entire thing. Said it was, that was all bogus, right? So it was in July 2013. HAARP shut down officially.
Now, where was the project moved to? I know that the array, like the government always moves
No,
stuff.
it's there. It's still there. But
It's
what
still there?
yeah, it's still there. And what they did is they signed it over. So what they did is they handed it over to who was it? The
It's currently in the possession of the
University of
Alaskan
Alaska
Geophysical
Fairbanks.
Institute.
Yep. So they have
But
it now.
There's actually, I thought that there was a secondary site in Colorado or
Oh,
Nebraska.
there's tons of these ionospheric heaters all over the world. And there's something called the Gwen Network. I don't know if you guys know that or not. That's another weird thing that's related to HAARP in some way. At least the conspiracy theorists say so. That is that's almost like your 5G thing. There are a series of antennas that are pretty much stationed all across the country. Now, what they're for is it's for a scenario to where there's like a nuclear war or something like that, right? Like a major catastrophe, and they're going to be able to use these things to communicate without satellites.
Right, it's the siren system.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. So they're around 200 some miles apart or something, and they're stationed across the country. But there's a lot of conspiracy theorists who said they use the Gwen network to also, do all these things with HAARP. Like they're channeling power through it, and it's not how it works though. They don't work that way. HAARP would blow it apart, is what I'm trying to say. At 1.7 gigawatts, you're going to fry these other things.
Well, what the scientists were saying about how the waves could carry around the globe for years, that's 100% accurate. If they produced a strong enough frequency, that would send reverberations through the atmosphere, possibly through geophysics, through the globe, through the whole planet, by essentially almost acting like a tuning fork.
All I'm going to say is that the jet stream did change its I believe the way it moved there for a while. Yeah, this all changed, coincidentally or not, I can't tell you, but that did happen.
I wonder if there's any changes with like the El Nino and the La Nina cycle.
What you just said. You know what I used to call those? I used to call them El Harpo.
El Harpo. Sponsored by Oprah.
Every time I'd hear it, I'd be like, "Oh, it's El Harpo." Okay, but yeah, I mean, so you can see where they went with this and how they had these fears, guys. I mean, but it's not all just, like I said, it's not all just conspiracy theories and crazy stuff like that, because the government was definitely looking into controlling the weather as a force multiplier. That is one of the documents. That is AF 2025. That was a proposed. A big proposal.
Well, anytime there can be some kind of a military gain from any project, you'd better believe they're going to try to use it, and they're going to put in requests for tests to be able to see if they'll be able to use it.
Well, the modification program on page 21 of AF 2025, this was in 1996, by the way. This is pretty much where your conspiracy theorists got the whole weather modification from, probably. They don't mention HAARP by name, but the communication dominance via ionospheric modification of the upper ionosphere to enhance or disrupt communications has recently become the subject of an active research. It says 1996. HAARP's been running now. So where do you think they were conducting that, that ionospheric research?
It's one of those things where once you see you can do it,
you can do it. You're going.
Let's do it more. Let's see what it can do.
Sure, absolutely. And then all of a sudden, they're like, we don't want to do this anymore because it's getting too much heat. So what I think happened is what happened with the UAP programs. We're just going to, no, it went dark. It went dark because they're like, we're just going to give it to you guys. You're not subject to any, Freedom of Information Acts.
Yeah.
Or oversight.
Or any oversight. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So, there are people who believe that HAARP did cause major issues, guys. I mean, they blamed everything from the Bhopal, the earthquake, to what was one of the storms, one of the big hurricanes. I can't remember which one it was, but I don't know. I don't really go for all that. I mean, if it did do that, I don't think it was a malicious intent. I think it was a runaway effect of all this atmospheric jostling.
Well, it all goes back to one of my favorite movies of all time, Jurassic Park, where a lot of this stuff, they don't ask about if they should. They just look at if they can.
Mm-hmm. They do, yeah.
And once it's done, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. Like, it's out. And a lot of these things can have long-lasting effects. Like you had mentioned, the jet stream did shift.
Mm-hmm.
The storms increased. When you start manipulating upper atmospheric stuff, you're going to see major changes down below the upper atmosphere. It's just a byproduct. You can't do one without affecting the other, unfortunately. Otherwise, we'd be able to do whatever we wanted and there'd be no repercussions. But that is not the case.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is this manipulation occurred and then it had ramifications or possible ramifications, but now that's being touted as the ramifications of global warming. And you have policy being built on that, and you have entire industries being built on that. And but you don't, I mean, of course, this is all just theoretical, what I'm saying, but it's interesting that you could have a government program that say hypothetically that this did work and that this did happen and this did cause all of this to occur, and then the government is covering its tracks and then building an industry on top of its cover up.
Well, why not?
I got one better than that, guys. There's one better than that for you. You're saying that you're pumping all this power into the atmosphere, and according to these scientists, with that little bit of power that we're throwing up there couldn't really affect anything. I mean, the Earth, we can't affect change on the Earth. We can't affect change on the Earth, but you just that doesn't make sense because you told us for the past X amount of years now that we're affecting the Earth and that it's our fault. But you have a machine that puts out more power than you could possibly imagine,
and you're literally heating the ionosphere.
The ionosphere. And you're not only heating it, Jess, when you cause these heat, this is what people don't get about HAARP. The reality of the thing, when it was on, I don't know if it's still on. I really don't. I mean, there's some controversy to that, but back when it was still operating, it would literally create these bubbles in the ionosphere and they would oscillate. And as they went up and down, that's changing what's down below, right?
Yeah.
So
because it changes pressure. You can't do that without changing pressure.
Yeah, dude. I mean, and these things are the kind of chaos effect. It's that chaos effect. It's the butterfly, Joe. It's the butterfly in the planes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It's the butterfly effect. So they were playing with things that they should not have been, much like something we talked about just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing. We're building these machines. We don't know what they're going to do. And are they made for nefarious reasons? I couldn't tell you, but I do know.
Were they made for that, or would they be seen to be able to be used for that?
That's right.
Is that just a happy government byproduct?
Right. Like, because I think honestly, a lot of this stuff starts in an innocent way, and then they're like, "Oh, wait, it does what? Let's go ahead and give that a try."
Yep.
And then it becomes it migrates into that nefarious realm at that point where it can be used for destruction. It can be used because let's face it, that's what we're all about.
Oh yeah.
We are all about destruction and development of weapon systems and effectively finding out ways to kill people better than we currently can.
Yeah, we do a good job of that. So, the conspiracy theorists, this is where you get your literal people who run around with tinfoil hats on, by the way. This is where that kind of came from. It's funny. It's hilarious. They, laugh at that, but In a way, it kind of makes sense, because if there really are these waves, well, you know what a Faraday's cage does? It
Yeah.
protects you from those waves. So if you had some kind of a mesh lining or whatnot, and they really are beaming crap into your head, or not even beaming it into your head, let's just not even go there. Let's just say that you're exposed to a really high EMF field. Well, we know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to take you down if it's powerful enough. You know, it can cause you to have hallucinations. We talked about this in our presentation. You know, there was research done by Persinger that says that, who was it, Michael Persinger, right?
Yep.
Who says that basically, oh, I can stimulate what he
Thoughts.
thinks, not just thoughts. He thinks that he can create these religious experiences and explain God away as nothing more than just a synoptic response in your brain. But he never bothers to ask the question, and you know, I'm turning this machine on, maybe I'm actually turning on a two-way communication device. Maybe they're not imagining it.
Yeah, isn't this what they did with the God helmet? Where
That's it, Jess.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. 100%.
And it
That's the God
shot-
helmet.
Persinger's the guy who made that. Yes.
Yeah, and then it helped you have like religious experiences as a result of
Yes.
using it and communicating with another.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, they tried to use that as a way to explain it as a hallucination. Well, maybe it's not a hallucination. Maybe you just turned on something that opened a two-way, you know, communication here.
Yeah.
That's that Tower of Babel that we keep talking about, Joe. You know, the whole point of maybe we shouldn't be doing those kinds of things because it may not be hallucination. We may be actually tuning into a frequency that we're not ready for.
Yeah.
But, you know, and we talked about the other thing, like you said, the direct thought into your head, right? I mean, that's been proven now. We can do this.
Yep.
100%. We can do that. So could HAARP, you know, have been, I guess, the predecessor to some of that stuff?
Well, when you think about some of these devices, even that they use now, they're so small.
Yes.
Imagine what you could do with something the size of HAARP.
Yeah. And
you
imagine
could cause it theoretically. This is we're going speculation time. Theoretically, you could incite hallucinations into your enemies, make them see some sort of invasion or apocalyptic scenario.
Now you're in blue beam territory.
I know.
This is where they mesh.
This is where it all meshes together with blue beam.
Yep.
And you could implement this apocalyptic scenario that was 100% manufactured, and anybody who wasn't in the range or in the field of this frequency that was being emitted, you wouldn't be seeing what these people were seeing, but you would be watching society crumble before you in panic and pandemonium.
You could do that, Joe, or you could just turn them into mindless zombies.
Yeah.
You can do that too, because this goes back to the research I was telling you about before. The guy couldn't pronounce his name. Anyone who can help me with this, feel free to let me know.
We do have our German friends over there who are listening in.
Fuarik, I don't know. I think that's his name, but he is the one who figured out what these frequencies do when we beam them back at people. You know, at 10.8, it causes riotous behavior.
Yeah.
At 6.6 hertz, it causes depression. Dude, I mean, if you had enough power with one of these systems, you could literally do just that. And some of the power, that it could put out theoretically could also disrupt, I believe, DNA and RNA, if I'm not mistaken, in some of the research that they've concluded. Dude, they were doing some crazy stuff is what I'm trying to get at. And they were doing it all with frequencies and power.
Frequency can split atoms. It can split molecules. It would definitely have tremendous ramifications on DNA and biology.
Yeah.
So what, so you see the truth in HAARP. You see its potential, right? What it theoretically could do. But we don't really know what it did. We just know what they told us it did. They were studying the ionosphere. Okay. They were studying the ionosphere.
Where do we think this project goes? Where do we think it went from there to now? Because it's been almost 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Since it was shut down, because it was shut down in 94, right?
It was shut down in
2013.
2013 was
2013.
okay. So 2013 was
okay.
shut down. So
officially it was shut down in 2013.
True.
Mhm.
But if you watched, what was it? I sent you guys the link there today.
Missing in Alaska, Zombies of HAARP.
Yeah, Zombies of HAARP. Great episode, by the way. Those guys were lucky. That's all I'm going to say about that. Those guys were absolutely lucky. They went up against something they had no clue about. Ken, what were you thinking? But seriously, that was an operating facility. That facility was still in operations. Now, was it at full operation capacity? No, probably not. I don't think they're doing anything up there anymore. It's kind of like Area 51. I think it's just there because that place is there. And they moved everything. That's good. There's some theories that HAARP actually has been moved to a mobile platform and that it is actually ship-based at this point, by the way.
I mean, that'd be the way to do it.
Mhm,
Either
yeah.
put it above the ionosphere and blast it down, or put it out on a mobile ship. Get out in international waters where it's that nice gray area that we love so much.
Yeah, man.
And go to town.
Floating Switzerland, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, that's my whole point, though. It's like, well, if they were up there and did this, and it showed those, I mean, you saw the lights coming on in the building. Someone's up there, so, and there's obviously some radiation still going on. I don't think that thing is running the way it used to. I mean, you used to be able to turn on a shortwave radio and hear the ARP signal.
Well, what do you think? Because talking about hearing things, do you remember those trumpet sounds?
Mm-hmm. I remember a lot of people saying that was HAARP, actually, back in the day. Yes, absolutely. They were thinking that was the heating of the ionosphere that you were hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not, but
it was really weird.
Oh, there's no doubt. The trumpet sounds are very weird. They've been heard all around the world, and they can't be explained. I mean, they've tried to explain them, and I know there's a lot of people like, oh yeah, well, it was always, it was a clear night and there was sound echoing across the lakes. Okay, that's fine and good for one event, but these things have literally been reported hundreds of times now.
Yeah.
It's the signaling of the apocalypse, you know that.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. The breaking of the seals.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the breaking of the seals. It's the 7 angels and all that fun stuff. We need to do an episode on Revelations. That'd be fun.
Oh man.
Modern interpretation of Revelations. Could you imagine? That'd be some good stuff.
I used to teach that, like.
No, modern interpretation.
Well, no, that's what mine was.
Throw HAARP in there. Aliens, aliens,
demons.
Yeah, well, they're the same thing, right? I mean, I know that's what they tell us.
That's what I'm told.
Bohemian Grove type crap, huh?
Yeah, man. Let's just go completely nuts like these guys did. But no, guys, there's some truth to HAARP, though. It's it was and is something.
Yeah. So what do you think, Ron? What's your takeaway? Because you, like I said, you've been looking at this. Then Jesse will want to hear from you too.
I want to hear from Jesse first.
This is so not my wheelhouse. I didn't know much about HAARP until we were kind of talking about it.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, I didn't really know much about it. It's I guess that's something that's not really been in the conversation in a long time.
It has been out of the conversation for a while.
Yeah, it's since they shut it down in 2013 and said I found it interesting how many people thought that we're still convinced that it was still doing mind control experiments. And there was a group of guys, a couple of guys from Georgia that loaded up with like body armor and guns and tons of ammo and a bunch of drugs. And they were
because you gotta have drugs with that.
Well, I mean, it's a long drive from Georgia to Alaska, so you got to get your methamphetamine in there. So they loaded up, and they were going to go to HAARP because they were going to attack, I guess, the people that were running HAARP and get them to shut it off because they claimed that it was trapping souls, and that it was operating off of trapping souls and controlling minds. So that was an unsuccessful operation, believe it or not. So that was one interesting one that came up. Yeah, that was in 2016. So I thought that was cool. Just speaking of like weather manipulation stuff, so looking at the St. Louis Arch was supposedly designed as a weather manipulation tool. The architect who designed it was really interested in weather manipulation, and there's like a conspiracy around the arch that it prevents storms from striking downtown St. Louis, or severe storms from striking downtown St. Louis. And because it is a large metal structure, you would assume that it would get struck by lightning on a regular basis. But according to officials, it's only been struck by lightning like sometimes never within a year, and then sometimes only 2 times within a year. So it's not like this giant metal structure gets struck by lightning on a regular basis like you would assume it to. It barely ever gets struck by lightning. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's witchcraft.
It is really interesting though, because you could technically do that, I guess, if you were pushing frequency through it to push storms away from its general vicinity. But I mean, you'd be cranking a lot of power. I think you'd almost hear it at that point too.
No, you feel it.
Yeah, you definitely feel it.
You feel it.
You can't hear the arch humming due to all the gunshots in downtown St. Louis.
This is true.
All the reverberations off the
true.
buildings. Well, you guys remember the Taos hum? You remember that legend from back in the day? You know, there's a lot of people who think that was related as well. So, you know, anytime that you're putting out these massive amounts of power, you can either feel it or hear it.
Yeah.
And Joe?
We're doing some experiments. We're doing some experiments right now with electromagnetic fields, and like you can hear it, and you can feel the physical sensation of the generation of the field. But it's also, there's starting to be like a cycle. We're doing some experiments, and we're having like weird, I don't know. That'll be a part of like some video I do in the future. But like we're experimenting a lot with that, and there's like, I don't know if it's paranormal or psychological changes occurring, but electromagnetic fields are very, very strange to work with. So we're working on some stuff.
Yes, and they're fun too.
Yeah.
I did it for ages, and you're right. I mean, it definitely, you can sense it. It's measurable, and there are actual physiological responses to the waves. I mean, I've told the story before. I used to use frequency generators and bombard my classmates in electronics class with high frequency waves. They didn't know it was on. You can't hear it, but you could feel it. And it would absolutely tear your mind apart. It would give you terrible headaches. And it was always bad on the girls. It wasn't so bad on the guys, but it was always bad on the girls. And my lab partner threatened to kill me multiple times. But
it's a common thread in your life, Ron.
It really is. I mean, I did things like that. I created, these crazy experiments back in the day. I have a generator around here that produces, I don't know how many thousands of volts. Did Kirlian photography with that thing. But yeah, I mean, high frequency is fun to play with, and apparently this is what they wanted to do up here, was play with the ultimate high frequency. So I know what it can do, and I know what it can't do. So there are a lot of things that conspiracy theorists will tell you that HAARP is doing that is not true. And then there's things that they're telling you that HAARP is doing that could possibly be true, like weather manipulation. Sure, it can do it. It can do it. Don't let them say it can't, because of course it could. Anytime you have that
too much
power,
documentation saying that they were having small subtle effects. So I mean,
you can totally do it. So yeah, it could totally do that. It could totally manipulate the weather and so forth and so on. And that's been shown by physics at this point. So, I think that they were experimenting with some stuff up there. It was a big experimental platform. They proved a lot of it. And what are they doing with it today? I couldn't even tell you. But is it theoretically possible that they're utilizing this technology to, further give themselves a force multiplier, so forth, that they could use this anti-satellite technology, or just being a way to actually keep communications up if the satellites were suddenly knocked out? You have to remember, guys, if something knocks us, and that's what they're trying to do, by the way, that is the next battlefield. It's up there.
Oh, yeah.
Once those satellites are knocked out, we can't talk. That's it. We can't talk. We can't position anything. We don't know where we are. We have no control over anything. Your car probably won't even start. Let's be real. Forget communication. But you've got to have a way to do that. So what's the best way to do it? Bounce signals around the globe by heating up a little section of the ionosphere and getting your signals around the globe without the need of satellites. That's how you do it. So there's definitely that part of it that can absolutely work. As for the whole other parts of the conspiracy theory, they're targeting people and beaming things into their heads. No, I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. I think that not HAARP anyway. I don't say they as in, sure, they could totally do that. HAARP as its own, if it was doing something like that, affecting moods and so forth, it probably did do that, but I don't think that they were intending to do it as a weapon is what I'm getting at. That was a byproduct of the technology, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was definitely a byproduct of the technology, and when they discovered that, then
always happy
light
accident
bulbs went off.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that's kind of where I sit with it too. It's one of those programs that there's so much fluff around it that it creates its own conspiracy theories.
Well, the embassy attack just a few years ago, that scrambled those guys' brains, dude.
That's true. That
was electronic warfare. That's the same kind of things. That's what we're talking about here. So it's the same kind of stuff. And like you asked before, where are they now? Who even knows? I mean, these things are probably so small now. I mean, you could probably get them on, like I told you, like a floating platform. You put them on a ship, you can put them anywhere in the world, literally anywhere in the world. So it's a heck of a conspiracy theory still today, and you don't hear about it still, which makes me wonder just a little bit myself, because it's like, why do we not hear about this? It was a big deal back around 2000.
Yeah, it really was, and it was a hot topic for a long time, and it's really kind of faded away. I think it was a fun topic for us to hit tonight. And we've got some really, really, really interesting shows planned for everybody coming up in the future. Some really fun shows. And I think that this is going to be a good place to drive the nail in the coffin. So, Jesse, before we sign completely off, fill us in a little bit on what we have going on over on Dark Dives.
Dark Dive. This is going to air. I should have episode 2 out on our channel and all the podcast aggregators. This episode this week is about the UAP and Dogman connection. And yeah, so it's just kind of our first foray into discussing that connection. There's definitely going to be follow-up episodes because this is just kind of rolling out and a lot of this information is just coming out. So Joe and I sit down for a conversation about, the UAP Dogman connection, where we think it's going, where it's coming from. And, it's a good little conversation we have. So, and it ties in with our last episode, and it ties in with our next episode. So come and check us out at on the Helmet Holler YouTube channel. The podcast is called Dark Dive. You can always look up Helmet Holler or Dark Dive, and you'll be able to find it on all your favorite podcast aggregators or our YouTube channel.
Yeah, I can't wait to check that one out. That sounds like a heck of a fun episode. The Dogman phenomenon by itself is really interesting, but when you start
interesting, is it interesting or is it just
terrifying?
Terrifying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not kidding. We're gonna do another Dogman episode, by the way,
and we gotta have Joe on. Jesse, you're gonna have to use that shepherd's cane and drag him in and get him on camera.
We gotta have a talk about this.
That man.
We got to have a talk about this thing because there's some weird stuff around it.
All right, let's go ahead and sign off.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching Wild and Weird Radio. We really appreciate all the views. We appreciate you guys interacting with us and checking out the show. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you are aware of when new episodes are coming out. This show airs every Friday at 8 p.m. on YouTube, and make sure you check it out on your favorite podcast aggregator, and turn on your notifications for that too, and download the episodes because that helps us get higher in the rankings. Make sure you leave a review, 5 stars only. We don't accept 2-star reviews. Thank you. You can see the door. You can always check out everything that I do at helmetholler.com. or on the Helmet Holler YouTube channel. That's where we post everything that Joe and I do. And you can check out Ron at Lanham Ron. He's working on some really cool orgonite pyramids right now that are turning out really nicely. Oh, you're posting them everywhere. Don't hush.
Right? He can't hide them now.
Jesus. God. Anyway.
So dramatic.
Drama queen. You can check out all of his cool new creations and everything like that on his page. You can find Joe at Skinwalker Sculpts, and he's working on some cool little items for the upcoming events that the guys are gonna get up to and do. So make sure you check out the schedule for where you can go and see them live. And we're looking forward to Wild and Weird Con coming up in October. So that is coming up. So everybody get ready. We are so ready for fall and so ready for festival season. So anything else, guys?
I'm super stoked about festival season as well. And remember, if you don't like, share, and subscribe, we might have to have Ron turn on his ultra mega 14.89 gigawatt generator and make you void your bowels while in public. Stay wild and weird, everybody.